Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have Tom Nichols back with us today. We'll chat with Tom in just a moment, but first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So Tom Nichols is a staff writer at The Atlantic and a contributor to the Atlantic Daily Newsletter. Tom, welcome back into the back room.
Thanks, Andy. Good to be back with you.
So let's start with Iran and the war. It's about 5 days old now. Give me the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well, the good is there's still a possibility that some other regime emerges out of this and the Iranians are, defanged. I mean, the president's claiming that they were 2 weeks from a nuclear bomb. Pretty sure they were not 2 weeks from a nuclear bomb, but their military capacity, their missiles, their nuclear program, although supposed to be obliterated the first time, definitely obliterated this time. So if that's the good, so be it. So far. The bad is that there could be 100 ways this goes bad, that the regime doesn't fall, that they somehow manage to hang on to power. They keep murdering their people. They're not going to recover their military capacity that fast. But I think that this administration basically decided regime change was the goal, and now they're backing off of that. So, that's a tough backpedal right there. So that's the bad. The ugly is that this war seems to be expanding. It's including other countries. It's inducing a lot of chaos in the region and in world markets. There's all kinds of unpredictable things that can happen. The problem with any sizable military action is that, you just can't see where it's going to go. And, that probably gives me the willies more than most things, is some black swan event that's going to be ugly that we can't really foresee right now.
Yeah. Did you happen to catch this morning's presser with SecDef Pete Hegseth?
Oh, yes, I did.
Dan Kane. I mean, how effectively or not do you think they're presenting the administration's case with these updates? I mean, you had Hegseth say things like, quote, death and destruction from the sky all day long.
We're playing to win.
Yeah. Or we can sustain this fight easily. That was my favorite one. Or, then he gets into the ad hominem attacks. The press only wants to make the president look bad.
That was actually the worst part of it, because I thought Hegseth's behavior this morning was just disgraceful.
Yeah.
We have dead soldiers, and he breezes by it, we'll avenge them, and then goes right into, but a few drones are going to get through, and you just want to talk about, the ones that did and not the one. Well, yeah. The press, that's their job, to ask about the one that killed people.
Right.
I'm writing up a piece right now about this press conference, and Hegseth was like the guy who designed, a bad airplane company standing in front of a crash and saying, okay, fine. What about all the planes that didn't crash?
Right.
That was really, it was just disgusting. General Kane, of course, consummate professional, began by grieving with the families, reporting their loss with sadness and with respect and reverence. Hegseth didn't do any of that. But your question, Andy, was how are they doing it, laying out the case? To which I answer, what case?
Right.
What is this war about, other than kind of the greater glory of Donald Trump? At first it was regime change. And, we were basically, they didn't name it this, but they were going to call it, they could have called it Operation Iranian Freedom. I mean, this is, a classic neocon war of national liberation and democracy spreading. Now they've backed off. Now it's about no nuclear weapons. Great. Laudable goal. Sinking the Iranian Navy. Always a good day if you can do that. No more, terrorism. We can all sign on to that. No more repression, mass repression within Iran. But you're doing a lot of damage to get those four things, and you're expending a lot of American ammunition You're doing a lot of damage to Iran that somebody is going to have to rebuild. And so, if that was the goal, I don't think we needed to go. And apparently at this hour, as you and I sit here speaking, we're still, just going pedal to the metal, bombing things. But if those were your 4 goals, you probably could have gotten them a lot with a lot less expenditure of effort and risk than we're taking right now. So, I thought General Kane, did a kind of standard briefing. Hegseth did a standard Fox News pundit outing, but nobody's explained the case. And the ones that have, the Defense Department, State Department, and the White House, can't seem to agree.
Well, that debacle earlier this week with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, where he's essentially blaming Israel and saying, yeah, they were going to strike, and then we had to strike because we knew they were going to strike us, so we have to strike us before they strike. I mean, it was so convoluted. And then the next day, he walks it back and literally says to the reporter who asked him the question the day before, were you in the room? And she's like, not only was I in the room, I asked the question.
And then that was the best part. It's like, yeah, were you there? Yeah, I am the one who asked you. The whole business. I'll be a little bit professorial here for a minute. The whole business about, well, Iran was going to strike Israel, so Israel, we thought they were going to go first. This is all so that the U.S. government can jam this into being preemptive. And the reason they want to do that is because preemptive wars, traditionally and under international law and in international tradition, are okay. A preemptive war is when you're about to be struck. You don't wait to get hit first, and you go first. So, it's kind of like if somebody cocks their fist and you hit them first. The cops don't arrest you for hitting first. You were about to be hit. The problem is there was no indication that any of that was going to happen. So this becomes a war of choice, a discretionary war. In fact, a preventive war. We attacked Iran for things we think they might do in the future. Those are a no-no in international law and in international tradition. And so you can see Rubio and the others saying, we did this because we wanted to. But you can't say that. So you have to kind of kludge up this whole idea that, it was about the Iran. The other rationale, of course, is that, we thought they might hit us first because we had a lot of assets in the region. Well, yeah, that's a situation of your own creation, that you put a lot of military force, pack it into a fairly small area, and then say, we have to go or they're going to hit us.
Yeah. But the other travesty was the other day when Hegseth said, we didn't start this war, but we're going to finish it. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying to myself,
no, we did start this war.
Did I just hear that correctly? So they can't even get it straight whether or not they started the freaking thing.
No, they know. They've got it straight, Andy.
Publicly.
Yeah, publicly, but that's because, again, they're feeding red meat to the base, giving the base and their media ecosystem talking points. We didn't start this war, but we're going to finish it. You're going to hear that all over the place because it's almost a very kind of, 1984, war is peace, ignorance is strength kind of. We did start this war, but the power of that expression, we didn't start it, but we're going to finish it, sort of obliterates the ability to think clearly about it because it's such a stark and easy message to absorb.
It should also not be a surprise coming from the administration that claims that Ukraine started the Ukraine-Russia war. So at least they're being consistent. I'm going to ask you to get professorial again. Trump did not seek or get congressional approval for going to war, nor did he ask for a UN Security Council authorization. And so when it comes to declaring and waging war, can you explain the separation of powers and why the Trumpian philosophy of basically, the end justifies the means is incredibly dangerous?
Yeah. For you constitutionalists out there, Article 1, Section 8, Congress can declare war. Article 2, Section 2, the president's commander-in-chief of the armed forces. That has always been a tension, those two articles, in part because, the founders wrote Article 2 basically saying, it's going to be George Washington, so whatever he wants to do is okay. I worked for a senator during the first Gulf War. I wrote a piece recently where I I admitted that I talked him out of invoking the War Powers Act. He was a Republican, God rest his soul, John Hines, wanted to help Bush. And I said, you're not really helping. The War Powers Resolution is very poorly written. What Bush did do, and the thing I did work with Senator Hines on, was he came and he asked for authorization, for kind of general, support from Congress. And Congress voted to support the first President Bush in that one. The second President Bush went for an authorization for the use of military force. We've operated in Libya. We had a UN Security Council resolution, on and on. Trump has decided that his theory of government is, I'm the president and I can do anything I want. Now, that is bad enough when it comes to any presidential power. When it comes to the power of war and peace, even I, a strong presidentialist about this, a strong Article 2 guy, the guy who talked his boss out of using the War Powers Resolution, even I find that appalling. You have to come to the American people. You have to come to their representatives. And let me make a kind of ugly practical case. Even if you didn't care about the Constitution and the niceties of law and, I don't know, things like democracy, you do, to successfully wage a sustained campaign, military campaign, you need the people and their representatives on your side. You need them to have buy-in. You need to have them on board. Even if you didn't care about any of that stuff, of all that squishy democracy, constitutionalism stuff, just as a practical matter, because now this war, good, bad, or ugly, as you said, this is Donald Trump's war. It's not even America's war. This is the president's war, because a majority of the American people are against it, and have been against it from the get-go. And that's something I just, as a kind of a side note, want to point out as a historical footnote. Presidents always get a bump out of using military power. There's always a rally around the flag thing. We're both old guys. I mean, we're old enough to remember George H.W. Bush. Well, I don't want to out you about this, Andy, but we're both old fellows.
Trust me, I know.
I remember George Bush 41 having a 91% approval rating at the end of the Gulf War, the first Gulf War. Trump, right out of the gate, had no serious public support for this, no support in Congress, no resolutions, nothing.
And
that's just a bad way to go to war.
Yeah, well, but part of that is because he spent last year promising no more wars, no forever wars, America first, right? It's enough.
And they believed him.
And they believed him, but I think this is where he has made a gross miscalculation, because you're right. Just like the movie Wag the Dog. Oh, shit, we're in trouble. Let's go to war. People love us when we go to war, right? Except it's not working this time, because it was like part of the foundation of his campaign. No more wars. So and he's trying to the people. A year later, we're at war in Iraq. I'm sorry. A year later, we're at war in Iran, and we have dead soldiers after all those promises. That's crazy. This is why part of MAGA is revolting.
And he's trying. Well, so far they're still with him, but I think that's pretty fragile. I think I don't think there have to be a lot more casualties.
The influencers, I think you're right.
The influencers are a bit.
But the catalyst to that is the influencers are spreading the message that this administration does not want.
And they're creating a permission structure for deserting him on this. Because, these MAGA guys, these MAGA commentators are defecting. Maybe I'm not alone. Maybe it's okay to do. But the problem here in terms of public support, where does he go from here if all he's got is the base, and he's going to end up having to own this? So, that, as I said, it's a terrible way to go to war, because you have nothing to fall back on. Now you have to be successful. And the problem is he hasn't defined what success is.
They're all claiming it already.
Yeah, I know. I can't figure that out. Oh, this is the most successful war.
It's like Groundhog Day. Mission. Yeah. I can almost see on the ship the mission accomplished sign again.
Which is why, do you notice today Hegseth went out of his way to say, this isn't a mission accomplished moment.
Right.
Well, it sure seems like it.
Yeah.
So what is it you're trying to do? And I think they really thought this was a kind of, magical thinking that will drop a whole pile of ordnance on Iran and then something good will happen.
I'm going to get more cynical and conspiratorial on you. And I'm going to suggest, only because he's a sociopath, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of people, and he's a pathological liar. To me, it's just Epstein. It's a distraction.
All right.
And it's like, there's no goal. There was no imminent threat. There was nothing. It was just the hope, the delusion that if he goes to war, the people will rally behind him. The Epstein shitstorm will magically go away. Well, today, the House Oversight Committee announced that it's subpoenaing Pam Bondi. Howard Lutnick is going to testify. This is not going away. This is a
Going
boulder. Right. Yeah. Epstein is a giant boulder rolling down a hill, and he's desperately trying to outrun it, and he won't. It's going to flatten him. So, to me, that's a narrative that fits with Donald Trump's overall incompetence and chaos. That is nothing. It's nothing about Iran.
I don't think you're being conspiratorial or dark. I think you're right. And I think but that's just one of many reasons. I think he's gotten a real rush out of the short-term successes in places like Venezuela. He's like, wow, that was easy. And I got to, kind of thump my chest in front of the State of the Union. And, I did Nigeria. And I mean, he's used force, and the peace president has used force in more places in 1 year than any of his predecessors. It's remarkable.
I think it's literally every month he's done something.
But I think he thought, okay, all that was easy because all of those other strikes, Operation Midnight Hammer and all the other things he did, those were all one and done. So I think he figured, not only will I squash the Epstein business, I will be a hero. There will be, statues to me in the middle of Tehran. The world will stop laughing at me because, he knows they are. But also even more ominous, and my colleague and my friend David Frum brought this up. If he's a war president, he's going to claim war powers. Like, it's unpatriotic and even treasonous to criticize me. Maybe elections aren't the greatest idea when we have people out there, fighting. Maybe I can seize control of some of the media. This is not an opportunity that he is likely to waste, especially if it starts going bad on him. So I think there were a lot of reasons, including, this sociopathic need for glory, squashing the Epstein files, but also maybe trying to put some powers in his back pocket in case all this other stuff starts going south. I mean, it's just amazing that the one thing people really seem to care about, the economy, this is the dumbest thing you could have possibly done for the economy. So those numbers are going to still be bad.
Yeah, and, oil prices are spiking, gas is going to spike, and it's actually impacting inflation itself. So it's just, it is the dumbest thing. But that's why his numbers are in the shitter, and he's underwater on every one of his signature issues, and why recently a Texas state Senate seat flipped, and why Texas is in play now in terms of the Senate. I mean,
maybe
they're in trouble. They're in trouble. And this is just a dumb Hollywood move that makes absolutely no sense.
It is very Hollywood. And there's another danger here, because you brought up, a moment ago, will MAGA world crack and defect? Look, there's a hard nut of, kind of, 30% of whatever it is. They're never going to say they're wrong about Donald Trump. They're never going to walk away from him, because the psychological cost of that level of cognitive dissonance is just going to be too high. Right. That doesn't mean they won't walk away from other Republicans.
Right. I look at his base. If we talk about his base, that's everyone who voted for him in 24. The people you're talking about, I agree totally. But we already see that he's lost the independents, he's lost Hispanics, he's lost the Gen Z young bro vote, and now he's even losing part of his non-college vote. So, right. If he had 50% before and he ends up with his 25, 30%, space laser crazies, that's fine. But the margins, as you know, these days on elections are won and lost by just a couple of points.
If he were running for re-election, we'd be saying he could be in trouble, but he's not. I mean, unless he tries to, this third term shit that I don't think that's going to happen. But right. I think he could try, but I don't think it's going to happen. But we'd say, well, he's in trouble. But the Republicans that rely on him, that are his life, that he's their life support system, he's their oxygen supply. I think a lot of them are going to be in trouble, because people who may not want to take it out on Trump might well take it out on some Republican that they don't happen to like. But Rick Wilson always says, and I'm stealing this from him, he says, Trumpism doesn't scale. It's not transferable. It doesn't, can't go, it applies to Donald Trump and almost nobody else.
Yeah.
And I think Republicans are really worried about that right now.
So with regard to the War Powers Resolution, I believe right now it's being voted on in the Senate, if it hasn't been decided already. Where do you think that's going to go? Is that going to
I don't think it's going to make it. I mean, some of the Republicans who said they were for it have already lost their nerve. And I suspect it's going to go nowhere. But at least the country needs to see this question being debated, because I think, one of the things that makes my heart sink, Andy, is that I'm willing to bet that there's a significant number of people in the United States right now that don't know we're at war with Iran. Just don't care. Just don't pay attention. Haven't heard the news. It wasn't on TikTok, so they don't care. And so anything that brings this into the public space is a good thing, but I don't think it's gonna go anywhere.
You mentioned Venezuela before. When I think of Venezuela, the top of my skull explodes, because it's like, what did we do there, right? We took out one guy, and now we're just like happy that everybody that worked for him is still in power. So nothing fundamentally for the Venezuelan people has changed. Is that what we're just seeing here, that in a couple of weeks he's going to truly declare victory, which he's sick enough to do, and say that the Iranian people are free and I'm great and this is 10 out of 10 now, the wars that I've solved or the freedom I've caused and created for people, and leave that country probably exactly the same, because the clerics are putting other people in power. Now, what's really going to change? Because there's no organized opposition. There's no opposition leader, right? The people are not going to really have an uprising. They're not armed. It's like, what is going to change in that country?
That last part's really important. I mean, when we knocked off regimes in other places like Libya, even in Serbia, where people say, oh, we bombed, and it just no, there was actually an army on the ground in Kosovo. It wasn't ours, and eventually we joined it, but there were people on the ground in Libya and other places. I think that's why you saw regime change fall off his list of goals, because I think in a week or so, whenever it is, he says, there, I said 4 goals, I achieved them all, done. And what happens to those people that may have gotten out in the street and chanted and cheered, they could be in a lot of trouble. He could be hanging them out to dry. Your question about what do we do in Venezuela is it's so interesting, right? It's like we went in and we stormed into the Corleone family compound, and we took Don Corleone and we threw him in the back of a van, and we said to Sonny and to Michael and to Clemenza and the rest of them, now let that be a lesson to you. Back to work.
Right.
Okay.
I love the reference, by the way.
And also, you're gonna kick upstairs to us now. Okay.
Right. Where's our fig? Where's our fig?
You gotta let us wet our beak now. Okay, but that's not really regime change. No. That's just a kind of a mafia deal where you took out the Don, left everybody else in place, and now you're kind of skimming from the proceeds. And that is, I mean, it was straight up, I don't want to say imperialism, because, man, I'm a conservative and I just can't be talking like a college student. I just can't. But it was something like that. And I think shameful. I think really shameful, that we used military force, that people got hurt, and for what? So that we could, say that we captured an international criminal. One of the things I worry about there is that I used to be a big fan of these kinds of interventions because I trusted the people in the government to do them more than I would trust this guy. But I am haunted by something Charles Krauthammer said the late Charles Krauthammer back in the mid-90s. He said, it's not a great idea. These are people you would shed no tears for. But it's not a great idea to have your foreign policy become a generic anti-son of a bitch policy.
Right.
Because there's a lot of sons of bitches in the world.
That's right. And we can't go and arrest and imprison.
And you can't arrest them all. So you're going to have to prioritize. And as of now, what are our priorities? We've hit countries in, 3 continents. We have no friends. Our allies are all stepping back from us, except for Israel, and Israel on this one issue. Where is this going to leave us? in terms of not just make the world a better place. Forget that. Does it make America more secure? And I'm not sure it's going to in the long run.
Well, the real irony about what you just said is that a lot of the free world looks at America and sees our SOB in the White House and looks at us the exact same way.
Yeah. I have to tell you that I had a very uncharitable thought. I was watching his, I was on MSNBC earlier, and they broke in because he was making some comments today about Iran. And he said, well, you know, it's bad when crazy people get nuclear weapons. And I thought, for once, I can agree.
It's always projection or convention with him, right?
I thought, all right.
Tom, love the insights. Thanks for coming on and helping us unpack this craziness.
My pleasure, Andy. Good to see you again.
All righty, take care. This episode was produced and edited by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-produced by Matty Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud for Radio Free Rhiniecliff, with additional editing by Matty Rosenberg, music by Andrew Hollander, and graphic design by Cricket Lengyel. And with a special thanks to our sponsor, The Epicurean. Again, thanks for listening. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Backroom with Andy Ostroy YouTube channel, where you can watch full videos of our interviews. See you next time.